Good evening, everyone. Good afternoon. Good morning to everyone joining us from different time zones across the globe. My name is Robert Ganzamore, and I am the Conservation Agriculture Lead at ShareScreen Africa. I'm very, very happy to be your host this evening. And on behalf of the entire team at ShareScreen Africa, I want to extend our very warm and sincere welcome to the very first edition of Cultivate Africa. So Cultivate Africa is our new virtual bi-monthly talk series designed to create a vibrant Pan-African community for everyone passionate about agriculture. And our core mission is to bring together farmers, agronomists, researchers, and students to share knowledge, discuss pressing challenges, and explore the innovative opportunities that are shaping our continent's agriculture landscape. For the future plan, we plan to host young people involved in agriculture to share their stories and inspire their fellow peers on the continent. Now, to kick off our very first session, we are incredibly privileged to have with us tonight a distinguished expert in the field. Please join me in giving a warm virtual welcome to our speaker for today, Mr. Jack Mutuku. Jack is the Deputy Principal for Technical Training at the College of Sustainable Agriculture East Africa, and with his extensive experience, is perfectly positioned to guide us through tonight's critical topic. Jack is going to take us through a presentation on climate-smart agriculture, practical solutions for soil health, and crop diversification. This topic sits at the very heart of building resilient farming systems. And I have no doubt we are all eager to gain from his practical insights. So without further ado, allow me to welcome Jack to give us his presentation.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Robert, and good evening to the team, to the entire globe, the people who are listening to us, and the one who are listening to this session. Welcome, and I'll just go on and to introduce myself. My name is Jackson Njiro, living in Kenya, and I'm the Deputy Principal of the Sustainable Agriculture of East Africa. In charge of the technical training. Well, in this session is something which it has been talked before. I think it's not the first time you're hearing about the climate change, but in order to counter check on that one, or rather to be able to ensure that ensure that at least we are food secure, we need to be smart. Hence the term climate smart agriculture. Across the globe, everywhere where we are, we all know that there is a lot of dynamics which have been happening as far as climate change is concerned. And to some extent, they are quite specific to where we are. Generally, we can say on this area, rather on this place, something is happening. But it is well profound, or rather well felt in our niche, rather in our local area. In Kenya, we talk about 5 climatic zones, whereby someone in the coastal part of Kenya experiences a different hitch when it comes to climate change as compared to the one with the near Mount Kenya forest. But all those people, they are experiencing something different, or rather an impact, either negative or positive, in their places of work, or rather what they are doing. So in order to ensure that at least we keep well equipped in our food production and in our day-to-day life, we need to ensure that at least we have something which we can cater, or rather which you can help us to cope with the unending climate changes which is happening. So I'll go direct to our slides, because at the end of the day, we need to have an approach which need us to get somewhere in the future. Yeah, so this is a session on the climate smart agriculture, whereby I'll just start with the how do you call the introduction, or rather the definition of the word, which is the climate smart agriculture. It's just an approach which we can sustainably increase productivity, enhance resilience, that is adoption, and reduce or mitigate greenhouse effect in our environment. So the framework, or rather the framework to ensure that at least we have this climate smart agriculture, we are going to focus on the productivity, mitigation, and adaptations. So when you talk about the productivity, we are talking about increasing the amount of food, but at the same time ensuring that we don't destroy what we have. You know, to some extent, people tend to, or rather, the farmers tend to ensure that they do open more spaces to grow their food, to ensure that at least we cater for the growing population. We already know that the projection, whereby there is a projection by 2050, rather, sorry, that one I won't quit because I'm not perfect with it, but we are almost heading to the 8 billion mark. And this mark, it means that every person has to eat. And in most cases, we ensure that in most African sets, we ensure that at least we have 3 meals per day. To some extent, this one is not possible to some. But with this population, we'll be able to satisfy this growing population with the little we have without compromising our forest covers, our land, our soil fertility. Can we be able to ensure that at least we feed all these people without destroying more places? We'll be talking about the mitigation. What are we doing to ensure that at least we can cope with that, or rather in the adaptations and the mitigation? So we are going to check on the 3 pillars, climate smart overviews. It has 3 pillars, which is to increase the productivity and the income. The second one is strengthen resilience to climate change and reduce greenhouse gas emission. So these are the 3 core pillars which will be guiding us to the end of this session. On this one, on the continuation of the overview, we are saying that key design principles, I'll call them the principles whereby in the climate smart agriculture, as I started saying, they are site specific, depending on the climatic condition where we are or where you are based. There is evidence because in most cases we have already seen what is happening in our environment, and is already a good evidence that we need to do something, and we need to do the inclusive of every gender to ensure that at least we have balanced agricultural practices. We also need to involve the farmers, institutions, and the policymakers. You know, in most agriculture, in the most of our countries, agriculture is part of something which the government already put in place, or rather ensure that at least the farmers feel the government in terms of policy. So what they do is ensure that at least we do the advocacy and ensure that at least we are somewhere, rather our institutions are well acclimatized with the day trends, the way weather is happening, and what can be done. So with all these players involved, we should be having a balanced energy and some trade-offs in those in our engagement. So what climate smart agriculture means in practice. As we said, they are site specific. So not every practice must meet all the 3 pillars. The one which you talked about, the productivity, adaptation, and the mitigation. Some of them will be much of an enabler. Because, for instance, when you're talking on the mountainous places, and we talk about planting agroforestry, remember the area already has a natural forest. So to that extent, that might not be practical. But what can we do to ensure that those people, or rather the people living in the highlands, they can get the best out of that rain? It means that maybe we can do the intensive agriculture in those areas to ensure that the people who are disadvantaged in terms of climate, or rather who are much affected by the climate change, can really get enough food grown in those areas as we work on ensuring that we put their places, rather make it more productive through climate smart agriculture. It also means that the climate smart agriculture, there is interdisciplinary evidence-based approach tailored to local context. As I said, not every practice must be met with 3 pillars, but at least we have specific areas where we are working and to ensure that at least we can help to farmers in that area to cope with the climate change. Use this climate projection and the local knowledge to choose appropriate practices. So the local climate projections, we need to ensure that even our weather forecast and our other stations are working well to ensure that farmers get the real-time challenges, or rather what they are supposed to expect. Requires capacity development at individual institution and political levels, engage farming communities and decision makers to decision makers to assess synergy and trade-offs. Right, so the key designs and principles of a climate smart agriculture, we had already mentioned. They are site-specific practices that are climate smart in one place may not be in another. For instance, when we talk about the terraces, we are talking about in those mountainous and the slope areas. The terraces might not work in the lowland areas. It is context-driven. It prioritizes set by priorities set by national, social, economic, and natural resource realities. Equity focused. We consider gender and economic difference to avoid worsening disparity. And then the outcome oriented. The designs, the principles should have that outcome oriented as a principle. Our practice in climate smart, if it is final outcome and advanced, the 3 pillars. So I'll go direct to the objectives, and I will talk productivity for food security. And we'll be talking about climate change impact, all 4 components of food security. We'll see them on our slide. CSA boost productivity without harming the environment. Remember, as I said, we are looking on increasing the productivity without harming the environment, or rather opening more forests. So this is a research which you can find in FAO website. Research by FAO. By 2040, with improved technologies, we might be able to reduce the hunger risk by 12% undernourished population if we utilize nitrogen efficient varieties well. And we might also be able to reduce the risk of hunger by 9% when we adopt the zero tillage techniques. 8% risk hunger will be reduced when we use the heat tolerant crops. Remember, we are in a series of climate change. The heat tolerant crops. So in the precision agriculture, like use of drones and the artificial agriculture, we'll be able to reduce the hunger risk by 7%. Use of integrated soil fertility management will be able to reduce the hunger risk by 4%. Crop protection from diseases will be able to reduce by 3% if we use it under the climate smart agriculture approaches. Where are we coming from? In terms of land aspect, natural resource, varieties and breed, input and pest control. We are going to look at the current agriculture practices, where we are right now, and what climate smart agriculture entails vis-a-vis the current agriculture practices. So currently there is a lot of expansion through deforestation and conversion of the forest cover to ensure that at least people may grow more food to feed the ever-growing population. But in terms of climate smart agriculture, instead of opening or deforesting or doing more conversion, we are going to intensify existing areas, restore degraded land, which we have a lot, depending on where we come, to ensure that at least we produce more instead of opening more forests. Our natural resources, they are being heavily used without long-term sustainability. The climate smart agriculture tend to restore and conserve and use sustainably what we already have. Varieties and breed depended on few high yield varieties. I always give a very good example when you talk about the poultry, white meat. In most cases, in most African states, you'll find that the only thing which we do utilize as far as poultry is concerned is only the chicken. But we have turkeys, we have ducks, we have geese, in which those are to some part of Africa, those are not well utilized. So those are some of the things which we are supposed to mix tradition, modern, locally, and adaptive varieties to ensure that at least we have a resilient breeds. Input and pest control, increase fertilizer, pest and herbicide. That's the trend right now. But instead of all doing that, we are going to improve agrochemical efficiency for those who are doing the conventional agriculture and integrate pest management. That is one of the crucial things which climate smart agriculture focuses on. On our energy, fossil fuel dependent machineries, we going to the climate smart agriculture tend to work more on the compost, crop rotation, solar, and biofuel use. Production and marketing, specialization for efficiency, diversification for stability and risk reduction. That's what climate smart agriculture entails, vis-a-vis the specialization for efficiency. So on this one, we are going to look on the agroecological principles and practices. First of all, when you talk about the climate smart agriculture, I can think of a lot of terms which we can use, but all of them, they are based or they do rotate around the about the sustainability of what we are using. And one word which covers much of the agro sustainability as far as ecological is concerned is the agroecology, or rather working on what we have. And it has some principles which guides us, which first of all, the first principle is about recycling the biomass and the optimizing nutrient cycling. Yeah, we know we have a lot of leftovers, or rather there are a lot of weeds which we have put in our farms. Instead of burning it, we are supposed either to do the composting or feed it to our animals, in which they give us some dungs. The dung, which will, if it is get composted, we get the nutrient which you can feed to our farm, and it also gives us a source of energy through biodigesters, whereby we get the biogas. So the second principle, it enhances the biodiversity for pest control. Yeah, we need to ensure that at least instead of going direct to killing the pest, first of all, we look at the economic importance of it, and then we look for all the ways from cultural, biological, and physical ways of controlling all those pests and diseases. And hence, this is where the IPM components come in, integrated pest management. That's a topic on its own. It's quite wide and broad. We'll be covering it as we move on. Yes, another principle is to ensure that we improve soil condition and the biological activities in our soils. Conserve soil, water, and genetic resources. This one is paramount to ensure that at least we have that sustainability. It also looks at the diversification of species and genetic resources. In this way, we'll have a sustainable way to ensure that at least we don't lose what we got, and we maintain what we have and improve on it. And we also need to promote ecological interaction and synergies. All these are the principles which guide the climate smart agriculture as far as agroecology is concerned. So the practices are quite simple. Some of you have been doing it, all the farmers around Africa. We have been encouraging farmers whom we work with to ensure that at least they maintain the zero tillage, use the nitrogen efficient varieties, and we have a lot the traditional crops which are well adaptable to our climatic condition. We know them. Drought or heat tolerant crops. A lot of research has been done, and we have a lot of crops which are coming up depending on the region and what really affects our area, whether it is high rainfall, erratic rainfall, or drought. We also, the practices also entail improved feed and manure. Yeah, we can, right now the grazing areas are becoming small. So there is that component of ensuring that at least we improve the feeds to ensure that they maintain all the nutrients which are required. At the same time, ensure that the animals are getting enough for us to reap the benefit. This also entails that probably instead of going to graze, we have a storage of or harvest more vegetables, or rather more uh, grass or the pasture to ensure that we use them during the dry seasons. Water harvesting, as I said, is a big component and a good practice to ensure that at least we achieve our climate smart agriculture approach. And drip irrigation still is one to ensure that at least we use the minimum amount of water as we maximize the production of available water. Two, remember, we talked about the productivity, resilience, and the mitigation. So we are in the second objective, which is the strengthening resilience, and that is adaptation. We are talking about the climate shocks, whereby to some areas in the semi-arid areas, the weathers are becoming very hot than they are expected. In some areas, due to changes of climatic condition, they are becoming even wetter. I can give you a very good example of a Kenyan coast. The last rain, they always plant, but right now we are looking for a looming disaster in terms of food security. The lands were flooded, so right now they didn't harvest. When the rain was subsiding, the ground was still wet, and after planting, the crop just failed. So these are some of the challenges which we are facing. In some areas, we are experiencing more drier. They are more drier than it has been, and more erratic rainfall. Remember, we always give an example of what I know about my area place. I remember we used to ensure that we used to prepare land, and by 10th of April, the rain starts. Nowadays, they take longer even to start. And when they come, they are not that enough to ensure that at least they can have the season crops which they grow within that period. So these are some of the challenges which we have, but they are there with that, and we are aware of them. So what we need to do is to ensure that at least the first thing to do is to reduce the vulnerability. And how do we do this? First of all, is to ensure that we're reducing the exposure. Most of the crops, most of the lands, we ensure that when they are open for cultivation, people tend to cut almost all the trees to an extent that we don't even leave the weed breeds on the sides or rather on the edges. So those are some of the things which we need to do to ensure that at least we break the wind to ensure, for a good balanced area where the weed will not be a problem to take away our nutrients from our soil. Some people, or rather farmers, need to focus on the no-till and the safe feed storage to ensure that we reduce that exposure part. On the same, we need to reduce sensitivity. That is the drought-resistant crops. That's something which we need to do to adopt water harvesting by use of swales, use of trenches in our areas, use of water pans, as a method of water harvesting, and the dams in our farms to ensure that at least we have water which is harvested during the rainfall time. And can be utilized within dry periods. Another thing we need to do is to increase adaptive capacity, skills, innovation, diversification. And one of the things is to ensure that at least we have a place where we get this knowledge. Right here, we have a School of Sustainable Agriculture of East Africa, which purely deal on this adaptive capacity as far as climate smart or the ecological agriculture are concerned. So these are the places where you can harvest those skills and innovation and diversify to ensure that at least you are safe as far as the climate smart agriculture is concerned, and as we mitigate the exposure of climate change in us. Well, allow me to wander out of the climate smart agriculture so that you can have the internalized knowledge for all of us, so that we can acclimatize. Why all these when we're talking about the climate smart agriculture? So we have a Food Agriculture Organization for strategies which govern the climate smart agriculture, and all these strategies, we have of them, that is agriculture and livelihood diversification, risk management and social protection, reduce gender inequality. You know, there are some places where we have a group, or rather the other gender, that I mean, not the other gender, the gender, either it is female or male, they are integral as far as food production is concerned. So we need to have that inclusivity. And then there is another one, which is a migration as income diversification. People tend to go to town, get the food, or rather get the finance on those areas, and then send them back home to ensure that there is a consistent flow in terms of food production. And it's a cycle, because if there is good production, it goes back to the town. So the people in the cities are well catered. So, having talked about the strategies, what are these components of food security under the FAO? One of it is availability. Is there enough food produced and supplied in towns, in our homes, in our area, in our globe? Do we have enough available food? Is it available? The second one, is it accessible? Can people obtain the food, economic and physical? To some extent, you find that there are people who might be having money, but the supply is low. So despite you having the ability to purchase the food, you can't access it physically. So that's one of the components as far as food security is concerned. Utilization. Is food nutritious, safe, and properly used? Food is not just food, we need quality food. And one way of ensuring that we have a quality food is through climate smart agriculture. The other one is the stability. Will food be available, accessible, and usable over time? So we are not just looking, we are talking about the sustainability and that stability part of it, to ensure that at least in future we are well sufficient as far as food is concerned. How do we link these components and strategies? So one way of linking the strategies to these strategies is linking the strategies to being availability as a component. Agriculture diversification will ensure that the food is available, and that is wider crop livestock mix, agroforest, and intercropping. We need to do all that as part of mini. I think we can think more apart from the examples given. Migration, let me transfer farm input and technologies. Yeah, there be the agricultural practitioners. Some of them, they are employed in these agricultural offices. They are in other towns, and the funds they get from those towns, they send it back home to ensure that the agricultural ventures which they have left behind to be taken care of by the family or by the farm hands is sustainable. And with that one, we can say that at least We have a migration population which is going to town and is bringing something to the agricultural part. Outcome. What are you expecting with this strategy of availability? The outcome is more reliable production and the supply of food in our homes, in our towns, in our supermarkets. Yeah, linking to the strategies to the access of food. How do we ensure that we have accessible, we do access food? That is a livelihood diversification. Non-farm income improves purchasing power. As I said, you might be having the money economic wise, you can be able to, but you can't be able to access food. So, as a component of diversification, non-farm income improves purchasing power, and that means that more money to our farming community. Risk management and social protection, cash transfer, insurance, extension services. I think that one is quite explanatory. Gender equality, empowering women, improve household income and food purchasing. If you go deeper in your research, you'll find that the women are the one who produces, who are the good, or rather, they are the one in they are, how do I put it? I would say they lead as far as the food production is concerned compared to men. So we need to ensure they are well empowered in order to take the climate smart agriculture approaches. And the outcome will be household can afford and reach and have rich food and can be able to reach the foods where they are. Mm-hmm. So linking strategies to utilization, gender equality, women access to training. I said that earlier, women accessing training, input and decision making to improve diet decision. Okay, sorry. Women access to training, training, inputs, and decision making improves diets. Risk management, extension services, storage, and nutrition sensitive agriculture. So first of all, the risk management, we have food, and then we need to ensure that we have extension workers are promoting the safe storage because remember, post-harvest losses are very high. You can in most cases we do have a good harvest, but always some of it, almost half of it goes to 40% actually goes to wastage, and some of it attribute to the aflatoxin sensitivity. Diversification, we need to integrate livestock, aquaculture, diverse crop improves dietary quality, and the outcome will be better nutrition, food safety, and good health. Yeah, the linkage of strategies to stability, talked about the risk management and social protection, safety nets, weather forecasts, insurance. Yeah, there are a lot of players in the insurance cover, whereby you can have your crop insured in case of any uncertainty. Weather forecast, as I said, our weather stations will need to do much, and our research institution, we need to ensure that at least the farmers knows what they are getting into as far as the risk management is concerned. Migration, that was another thing we talked about, laminas, but it still appears in the stability. Laminas provide steady income during crisis. In case of there is no food, enough food, or there is a hike due to inflation, the migration team ensure that at least they come during the crisis. Diversification, spread risk across crops, markets, and income streams. The outcome will be a consistent food security despite the shocks. Yeah, any question?
Yes, Jack. Do you have any question in, well, I saw one question in the chat box. I think you can address it before we continue the rest of the presentation. Benjamin Hawimanayanga asked a question. I'm not sure if Benjamin is online, if he can unmute himself and ask his question. Otherwise, I can read it in the chat box. Benjamin, are you there? Well, he said, thank you so much, Jack, for an excellent insights. I'm Benjamin Awimanayanga from Green Leaders Network, Rwanda. During your presentation, I've come to understand climate smart agriculture, but I would like to know if is there a difference between climate smart agriculture and conservation agriculture? Thank you so much. I believe this is a student at the Rwanda Institute for Conservation Agriculture. So if you can address this question, whether climate smart agriculture has anything to do with conservation agriculture.
All right, thank you. And thank you to Benjamin. Your question is very well valid. And I would say conservation agriculture as part is a practice. It's just a practice. There is a difference between the approaches and the practice. When we talk about the conservation, I mean, climate smart agriculture, we are talking about the approaches, which makes us be able to produce more, mitigate, and reduce the emission. When you talk about the climate conservation agriculture, is a practice. And this practice, somehow it is interchangeable. It can be whether you are ensuring that you don't disturb your soil at all, but at least ensure that it keeps producing. And to the conventional agriculture, it has a meaning too. Conservation agriculture means of use of herbicides to kill the weeds and killing the weeds using the herbicide. Do you think is a smart move? Because killing the weed, it means that you'll be using something which is toxic to the soil. You'll be bringing an imbalance in that soil ecosystem, and at the same time making a place bare. So when you talk about the conservation agriculture, is a practice. It depends on how you take that into context, whether you are using agroecological practices or you're using the conventional part of it. Either way, I would say is a climate smart approach as far as herbicides are concerned. Don't know whether I have fully answered his question.
Well, I think you addressed the question really well. Maybe we can go with the rest of the presentation, and after all, everyone will get a chance to ask their questions and maybe get more clarifications.
All right, thank you. Well, we have covered the productivity part of it, adoption and resilience part of it. Now we are going to the third pillar, which is mitigation, reduction of greenhouse gases. According to the statistics of intergovernmental panels of climate change, we are talking about some of the important gases which are affecting our environment. And one of it is the nitrous oxide, which is a greenhouse gas. We're talking about the nitric oxide and the nitrogen dioxide. All these are emitted by the motors. And globally, we are talking about the global greenhouse emission, whereby we are checking on the index. And agriculture practices is one of the things which are contributing to the greenhouse gases in our environment. They are followed closely by the heat production industries and the buildings. I think if you go to the website, you'll see how much agriculture is producing. It's around 24%. Yeah, around that figures. Industry is around 25% too. And the emissions, yeah, I can't get to the statistics right now. But all these areas let's focus on the agricultural part, which we are the main contributors. And what we need to do is to ensure that we reduce the emission or enhance carbon sink to reduce or rather to cope with the climate change. And one way we are doing this is agriculture many sources, deforestation, fertilizer use, energy, and livestock. How do we approach this? First of all, we need to reduce or avoid emission, efficiency, use of input, energy, manure management. When you talk about the manure management, to some small scale farmers, they have never thought is a problem. But if you have been in the pastoral areas, you'll realize that they are able to produce or to gather more than 10 tons, 20 tons per month from their cows, from their herd of cattle, which they keep. So, and in most cases, you'll see that these droppings or these cow dungs are left open in the environment. In the process, due to high heat intensity, methane gas is released, which is a very important greenhouse cut in our environment. So, in order to ensure that at least we reduce that emission, we need to do something, and one of them is through manure management, either through composting or production of how do you call it? The gas, the gas which are supposed to be used for cooking. That is biogas. Sorry. So the next thing is to enhance carbon storage. The trees, I know where we are. We are sitting on chairs which are made of wooden. We have houses. All those are storage of carbon. The moment you burn them, the moment you cut that tree, it means that you are releasing the carbon dioxide to the environment. So instead, how do we help the environment to cope with that? Is by planting more trees, we'll be able to which will be able to absorb more carbon dioxide from the environment. And then the soil organic matter, when instead of burning our vegetation or during land clearing, by doing composting, we are ensuring that at least we are putting more carbon sink in our soil and reducing as much as possible using the fossil fuel. These are the practices which will ensure that at least we reduce the emission of greenhouse gases. One of them, as far as crop is concerned, we do the zero tillage, integrated nutrient management. I've talked about the biogas because in the biogas after getting the methane gas which is used for cooking, we are left with that slag cow dung, which can be utilized as a fertilizer in our soils. Livestock improves feeds, genetic manure management. Yeah, we need to check. Remember, we talked about using the breeds which are heat tolerant as far as crops and livestock are concerned. So here where the improvement in our research institutes where they come in and ensure that at least we maintain the genetic pool of our traditional genetics and the one which we are coming in, which can be improved or rather can be used to improve our tradition to ensure that they do cope with the changing weather patterns. Manure management, I've talked about it. Fishery, sustainable aquaculture. If you live in the coastal areas, especially in Kenya, we have a coastline which we have endangered forest cover of mangrove. So we need to ensure that at least people manage those areas well to ensure that there's a sustainable way of the moment you destroy the breeding site which are within the mangrove forest, the fish goes away, the fish population go away, and then you see the prices of fish going up, which means that it will be left for few, and it's not sustainable in that way. So we need to restore those ecosystems, not just the mangrove forests. We are talking about even our natural forests. All that need to be done. Agroforestry, Tree in farms. If you have a big farm, you can have an agroforestry area, and if it is small, remember we need to eat too. We can use a agroforestry orchard type, whereby you'll be planting more fruit trees. And the more fruit trees you plant, it means that you'll be food secure, which you can be used. You'll be having the fruit which you can sell to buy food. You can use the fruit. You can use utilize the fruit as a food. At the same time, by coppicing or rather cutting the overgrowing branches, you'll have a part of your fuel which can be used in the farm. And still you can get the litter, which will be good for composting. So climate smart agriculture synergies. What are we aiming? We are aiming about the food security, higher yields, stable incomes, better nutrition. We have discussed it for the last few minutes. Adaptation, resilient to drought, floods, and pests. Yeah, again, I'll give an example of the floods area. Lowland, we have in Kenya, we have a delta, Cotton River Delta, and it has been very important to the locals. So the moment people start cutting the natural forest in that area, it means that the siltation takes place, and these rivers, when there is a high rainfall, they break their banks. And what happens? They flood the farms, carry away their livestock, the crops, and they disperse or displace people. So in order to ensure that at least we are creating adaptation mechanism, first of all, is to restore those forests. And this applies to all other places, whether it is mountainous, whether it's the little vegetation which we had. Remember, even in the desert, in the semi-arid areas, we have those acacia trees. It is our duty to ensure that at least we plant more to adopt to what we have. Reduce emissions, enhance carbon sink. The emission, I've given an example of a proper disposal of cow dung and the animal droppings to ensure that at least we reduce the nitrous and the methane gas getting into our eco environment. We're talking about the equity, inclusive benefit for women, men, and marginalized community. All that are part of the climate smart synergies. I'm almost getting to my last slide, whereby I prepared key takeaways. And one of them, climate smart agriculture means productivity plus resilience plus mitigation. They are all intertwined. They have a lot of discipline into them. And when we talk about climate smart agriculture, we are talking about the ecological climate farming approaches, and to some extent, the people who are using the conventional agriculture. But when we talk about the climate smart agriculture, we need to actually do away with some of the things which are not really helping our environment, or rather look on the way to ensure that we have the resilience and the mitigation of what our practices might be causing to our environment. Climate smart agriculture is also site-specific, evidence-based, socially inclusive. That one, I think I started on the productivity part. I explained about it. Ensure food security while addressing climate change. Yeah, we have a lot of advocacy as far as climate change is concerned, but still, the most integral part of the climate smart agriculture is to ensure that at least we are food secure, depending on where we are, whether you're in the farm or we're in the cities. And talked about the sustainability. You have to build a long-term sustainable way for people and the planet. All that is left for us. We don't have another home. That's what we have. These are challenges we have, and we need to address them. All right, and here comes the end of my presentation. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Jack. That was an insightful presentation. We learned a lot from your presentation, and the soil health techniques you shared are really valuable vis-a-vis where the world is headed, considering the effects of climate change. I think we need to have more of these conversations. Of course, just like you mentioned at the end of your presentation, we need to be food secure, but also we have to address climate change issues at the same time. Yeah. Um, if anyone has a question, you can type it into the chat box, but also you're free to raise your virtual hand and ask your question directly to Jack. In the meantime, I had a question. Um, during your first slides of your presentation, you mentioned something about advancing climate smart agriculture, and you said one of the ways we need to advance the climate smart agriculture is by involving policymakers. But my question is, how do we involve them? How do we engage them, especially that these people are not well endowed with the knowledge of sustainable agriculture or even climate smart agriculture to be specific. So how do we engage people that are in position to make decisions but do not have the required knowledge? Thank
Kindly
you.
repeat the question again. I think I missed somewhere.
Yes, the question is why you mentioned that we need to, one of the techniques to advance climate smart agriculture is to engage policymakers. My question is, how do we engage these people, especially that they don't have the required knowledge in sustainable farming or climate smart agriculture in general? How do we engage people who don't have the required knowledge?
All right. Thanks so much for that question. Okay, I didn't get the name of the person who really asked about it, but it's a very
It's me, it's
nice.
me.
Uh, oh, it's you. Okay. All right. Thank you, Mr. Robert.
Thank you.
Now, when you talk about the policy makers, I think our agricultural practices uh, uh, and agricultural practices they are quite enrooted with our government policies. And as you said, to some extent, our the employees or other people in these offices might not have a grasp of what's really happening. Remember, nowadays, because of capitalism, everybody is talking about making money. But are we making money in an expense of whereby we are destroying our very home, which is used to grow, or rather where we used to make that money? So I'll give you an example of what has really happened in Kenya, and through an organization called Sustainable Agriculture Community Development, we have been able to lobby for these policies to be changed to ensure that they include the ecological agriculture practices. Sometime 10 years back, in the Ministry of Agriculture, it was just a desk which was just addressing about agriculture, I mean sustainable agriculture and organic agriculture. Today is not a desk anymore. There are policies which are within our counties. Yeah, in Kenya we have 47 counties, and out of those 47 counties, we are already having about 3 counties which have approved and included climate, ecological agriculture as part of the policies, which ensure that at least all these areas are conserved, whether it is um, wet, wet areas or the forested areas. And it takes long. It's a journey. We have been there. It has taken us more time, but the consistency to ensure that, because to some extent that you don't change a farming way overnight, it will take a lot of convincing. So the first thing is to ensure that all the climate smart practitioners in our community, in our district levels, in our county levels, are well involved, and we have a lot of advocacy to ensure that at least they put that as a policy. Yeah, there is that challenge of ensuring that at least we get a hearing all our voice, but it doesn't mean that we need to keep quiet. We need to make the noise and amplify that noise of a climate smart agriculture or ecological agriculture practices.
Thank you so much, Jack. I think that addresses my question really well. And it's so inspiring to hear that Kenya has transitioned from the Ministry of Agriculture being just a desk to designing policies that advance sustainable agriculture. I'd ask Benitus Niemano, he raised the question in the chat box, and I can see he raised his virtual hand. If you can please unmute yourself and ask your question. Start with introducing yourself, the name, what you do, if you're a student, what you study, and then address your question. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much, Mr. Robert. I'm Bentus Nyomhano, a conservation agriculture student from Rwanda Institute for Conservation Agriculture, RICA. And today I'm very happy for being part of this conversation. And besides being a student in conservation agriculture, today it was a pleasure to know also the benefits of climate smart agriculture. And my takeaway is that climate smart agriculture is like is a good practice to kill two birds with one stone, where one can get higher production, but also dealing with this global problem of climate change. So during your presentation, Mr. Jackson, I got a question of curiosity where from your presentations, one can really be convinced about the benefits of climate smart agriculture. But again, as we can see, the ones to put in practice all of these practices, they are the farmers on the ground. And in Africa, smallholder farmers are the main producers of food. So I would like to ask if there are some techniques or the motivations that are used in order to boost the smallholder farmers' adoption to this climate smart agriculture during this time. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Can answer that? And I would say yes. Small scale farmers make us about 60% of the farmers who produce our food. And there is a lot. And per every kilogram of food produced, there is a cost attached to it. But the question is, how much cost? And in this cost, does it take care, or rather, does it take care of the environment, or does it destroy it? It depends. And to some extent, people have thought of a quick way of making money, or rather producing food. But how much do we live as part of our climate smart agriculture? Yeah, in order to answer your question, is that a lot is happening, and a lot of advocacy and a lot of training and a lot of empowerment to the community is happening. And one of it, farmers are encouraged to produce food on sustainable way. And one which is mostly talked about is about organic agriculture. So the motivation is not just to produce the food agriculture, but nutritious and quality food. So to answer your question, yes, there is a lot of dynamics happening. There is a lot of motivation, and one of them is talking about the benefit of a climate smart agriculture and how to control pests and diseases through integrated pest management, which is the best approach rather than trying to wipe it. Because you try to wipe one, and then at the same time you create a more problem, which means that you'll be creating an imbalance of the predators and the pests in your ecosystem. So, as an example, I'll just give organic agriculture and sustainable agriculture, sustainable ecological agriculture practices and approaches as part of the motivation or other practices which we are teaching farmers or rather training farmers to adopt.
Thank you so much, Jack. I hope Benito's question was addressed really well. I'd like to ask Shimimana Enoch to unmute himself if he's available. Just ask his question into the chat box and maybe talk a little bit about Green Leaders Network and what they do. Enoch?
Yes, yes. Thank you so much. Are you getting my voice?
Yes, we
Yeah,
can
I
hear
can
you.
get it.
All right. So my name is Enoch Chimimana, and I'm the coordinator of Green Leaders Network. Green Leaders Network, it's an association of climate activists born at Rwanda Institute for Conservation Agriculture. And we are to promote sustainable agricultural practices on the core of conservation agriculture that we are studying currently at the university. And it's my pleasure to be with you here tonight with a question. Though I'm doing conservation agriculture, I have a hobby of coding. I'm a computer programmer, basically with Python and JavaScript. So I have this concern that climate smart agriculture always comes at the backbone of tech. Of course, without tech, no climate smart agriculture. And we know that agriculture is considered as a low-paying industry. So I was wondering what strategies is Kenya using to attract these tech experts to engage in agriculture and transition traditional farmers to adopt these climate smart practices. Yeah, thank you.
Okay, thank you, Enoch. Yeah, first of all, I'll dispute the wording you have used about agriculture being the low-paying practice. It's not true. Agriculture doesn't involve about growing of crops. It has stages whereby there is growing of crops and there is marketing and making that food available. There is a transportation, there is marketing, there is a farming. What we need to ensure that at least everybody takes their share. So the only thing about we do, or rather we ensure that the farmers learn all three the pillars, which is the production, transportation, and marketing. The reason why people tend to think that agriculture is a low-paying job is because we have been so much acclimatized on our local, will I call it, not okay, our niche. Probably we are not being able to get well exposed to all these practices. But in agriculture, what you need to do, especially in Kenya, we are looking at every enterprise as a business, which needs all those components well linked. And I'll give you an example of potato growers. Few years back, our potato farmers were always crying because of the middlemen who are coming to buy them from them. But the same Irish potato, sorry, the Irish potato, where they come from, people are living at the anguish of poverty. But the people who are coming to sell them in town, even you personally, you find that the prices are very high. But you wonder what that discontinuity, what that the dispute between the farmer and the buyer. And what we have done, what the government has done, is to strengthen all the players to ensure that everybody plays this part. There are some policies which have been put in place to ensure that even transportation, there is a certain amount of, in terms of kilograms, to ensure that the farmer doesn't get the value of what he or she has planted. Before, you would see people carrying sacks weighing over 150 kilograms. And when you ask around and you hear the prices which they are being bought, they are not really good to motivate that farmer. So the government and the non-governmental policies, through the non-governmental NGOs, they have been able to reach out to those offices, and they have been able to streamline a policy which ensure that every sack, rather the sacks of the Irish potato, should not exceed 50 kgs. That means that they are weighed at the farm level gate, and they are transported as such to the farmers. And the one thing to ensure that at least the farmers don't get conned, or rather don't get lost in those environment. First of all, is to ensure that the farmers they are formed groups, the groups which form societies. So that one increases the bargaining power, which means that if farmer A, as the Irish potato, and despite the prices, he or she is willing to sell it at the lowest price. Those policies, or rather those groups, ensure that we have a standardized price. We have a standardized market price, which you are supposed to sell either to the middlemen, or the transportation parts which are taken to the city. So what we have done is to ensure that we have strengthened the policies and ensure that the farmers are set into groups, farmers user groups, so that if you are going to teach them, or rather you are going to train them on something, we are able to reach them and empower them through training.
Yes, thank you so much. With what Enoch just said, I think he provoked my thinking, because I went to the Rwanda Institute for Conservation Agriculture. I'm an alumni there, and before going there, I held the same thinking as him, that agriculture is a low-paying job, and it's only reserved for the retired people. But the fact that, from what the Forbes magazine tells us, there are lots of people who are making billions of US dollars from just farming. If you look at the Carnegie Macmillan family, whose net worth is 50 billion USD just from grain and palm oil. Also, Harry Stein, who is now worth 7.4 billion just from soybean and corn. I think that only opposes the fact that agriculture is a low-paying job. It's not. And if you look at where the world is headed, I was watching the Prime Minister of Norway, who recently said that the world is facing only two problems, and that's poverty and global warming, basically climate change issues. And if we don't do exactly what John has been talking about, then the effects of this two are going to exacerbate, and the food production is going to take a hit. So if you have a business in agriculture, if you are a researcher in agriculture, if you're a student of agriculture, if you do it well, then you're positioned to be the next billionaire. Why not? Yeah, so if you have any question, I see Annette Mutoni just asked a question in the chat box. She asked, I'm wondering how I think she meant climate smart agriculture practices could help address human wildlife conflict, especially in areas where communities depend on farming.
All right, thank you, Annette. First of all, in a sustainable agriculture set, where we have some principles, and one of the principles is whether what you are doing is culturally acceptable. And the other one, I'll quote another one as part of sustainable agriculture when you talk about permaculture as a system of food production. We talk about the fair share. So going with the fair share approach, the first question is that the animals are there with us. We are here with the animals. How do we make, or rather, do ensure that we coexist? What kind of measures can we do? And there are two, I'll give you two examples. And one example is about the riparian land. In Kenya, when you talk about the riparian land, we are talking about 100 meters radius from the water source. But to some extent, due to financial constraints, to ensure that the irrigation water reaches our crop beyond 100 meters plus, farmers tend to move the cultivation areas near the river. And what happens is that we always destroy the vegetation which covers around and along the river. So what happens? We are taking away the food of the, we are taking away the food, we are taking away the resting place, we are taking away the environment where hippos and hippos and aquatic animal live. So what happened? If you take away the environment where the hippos get food, it comes direct to what you are planting. So first of all, you created, despite that you had all the good intention to ensure that at least you can feed your family, you end up creating another problem of wildlife conflict. So as much as we would like to produce food and produce enough food, we also need to ensure that at least we take our fair share. If the government policies say that you're not supposed to farm 100 meters below, or rather within 100 meters radius from the water source, kindly let's adhere to that. The other example is the forest areas, and I'll give an example because I live in a forested area. We need to be smart. I'll give you two examples or two on that area. I'll give you one in the semi-arid areas. In the semi-arid areas, especially in Kenya, where the Maasai lives, there is a lot of wildlife, which involves the five big cats. So they have become smart. Instead of killing the lions and safeguarding the need, because most of the time the lions attack at night. So what do? Is they can't keep guard until morning. So what they have done is that they have there is an innovation. Remember, we talked about the innovation in agriculture as part of the climate smart agriculture. They use the dimming flashlights, flashlight torch, whereby you put around as a fence, and as long there is that flash coming out, it scares away the lions, so the lions don't attack the animal. That's an approach which the Maasai people community have learned, and nowadays they can sleep well without worries of the animals being eaten by the lions and the cheetahs and the leopards. The other climate way whereby the climate smart agriculture can solve is about the elephant. Remember, the elephants are most destructive in our land, especially if you're a farmer near a forested area where there is a frequent or there is a high population of the elephants. So, what a climate smart way of doing it? People have learned about using of bees. Remember, bees are part of our ecosystem, which help in ensuring that at least uh, um, our crops are pollinated. But at the same time, despite of the pollination playing the integral role of pollination, giving us food in terms of honey, they have another role. Uh, the innovations at place right now, elephants are afraid of bees. So what do people do? Instead of putting live fences, which elephants have become smart, they come and push them away and they still invade your crop. What they do, instead of putting a live fence, which is electric, they have they just set beehive, the apiary around the farm, and that one keeps away the elephants. So it's a smart way of ensuring that you don't have the conflict with the elephant. They keep them on the other side of the forest and ensuring that they don't come on your side. As far as there is that buzzing of bees, they don't dare. And you don't put it, they are put spaced, maybe about 10 meters, 10 meters, 10 meters. So you can see from one hive to the other, or 5 meters, there is a space where the elephant can pass, but it can't pass because the bees are there. So yes, climate smart agriculture can keep away or rather lower the risk of animal farmers conflict. Thank you.
Thank you, Jack. I think we have one last question from Precious Wavuya. I saw that she's from Zimbabwe, and Zimbabwe is well known for um, very good and excellent um, conservation agriculture practices. So we have to take her question. She asked, how has Kenya achieved successful adoption of climate smart agriculture practices among farmers, and what policy approaches contributed to this success?
Sorry, come again with that question.
It's in the chat box. She asked, how has Kenya achieved successful adoption of climate smart agriculture practices among farmers, and what policy approaches contributed to this success?
All right, thank you. As I said, we farmers, do realize. Remember, the first scientist of our own climate, as far as agriculture is concerned, is the farmer. Since time immemorial, since the shift cultivation to the agrarian revolution, everything. Remember, human have been able to domesticate food, but every time there is new challenges which they are facing, and every challenge they have been trying to solve it, whether it's through shift cultivation, whether it is paddocking, all those are just early ways of ensuring that we get right into what, or rather, how the early man used to ensure that they are food secure. In a modern way, we have also developed a lot of technologies and innovation, in which some of them they have been having their ups and downs. But one thing stands: the environment is changing, and the environment, the climate, the world can live without us. So it is we who need to take care of our homes, because we can stay here without our homes. So what we do is that a lot of players have been together, have been doing this. It has not been a easy task, to some extent of even denied public address by the people who think what people advocating for climate smart agriculture, sustainable ecological agriculture are concerned. They didn't see the sense. But the climate change is here with us. So the same people, or rather the same policies which were undermining the efforts which were being made by the players, whether they're in the non-governmental offices or activists, are the same people are getting, or rather they are experiencing the same challenges. So the journey has been there, not today, it has not been won, it is not yet born, but we are still trying our best to ensure that at least by 2030, Vision 2030, according to the Kenyan vision, at least we have enough players who can move this motion even in the parliament. Right now, the debates are within the counties. Counties are just a part of the big government. But as long as these county governments are having these policies, we are going to push them to ensure that at least we can even have debates and the policies being changed, or rather, policies being considered which favors the climate smart agriculture. It's not about when, but how. But it's not about how, it is about when, because that's where we are heading, and the climate change is here with us. So it's a joint effort from the farmers themselves, the challenges that have been documented, the players, whether they are non-governmental, whether they are sustainable agricultures like SAIA. That's why we have a college right now to ensure that at least we have the gurus, or rather the experts, who can be able to argue even with the people from the conservation agriculture. So that's what we are doing. Those are the some of the baby steps we are making. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Jack. I think this was an insightful event. We learned a lot from your presentation and from the questions that were asked. They were answered really perfectly. I would like to bring this to the closure. This has been the first edition of Cultivate Africa, and they're going to have it be monthly, so you can expect it on 27th of October again. So we hope to see you again on that date. We will be one of you, I mean, a young people as well. So please be there. We'll be very happy to see you again. Thank you, Jack, for being our first speaker for Cultivate Africa, and we hope to have you again on the platform. It will be really nice to learn from you again. Thank you, everyone who has been here. This has been great, and see you. Have a good night.